First, want to say thanks for this opportunity. I don't take it for granted, and I have to say, when you were clothing me with this, I almost felt like, should I go register for another course? Because it's been some time since I had that, and it reminded me of that. But as I said, I really appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, I was also asked, and I think I also channeled my journey. I think I always describe it as that song that says "A Million Little Miracles" from what's that? What's the group again? Sorry? Yes, them. Because when I look back at my life, and even when I say here, you'll realize it's a whole lot of little million miracles. And that when I look back, I'm like, I don't think that would have happened. So my name is Skhulile Mdaka, or I should say Brother Skhulile Mdaka. And yeah, so my profession, I work as a senior actuarial analyst, and I know, so usually when you say that it's not clear what does an actuary do, right? So I think, let me first start on what is an actuary, right? First thing I will say is, you can ask any actuary or someone who's still pursuing to become a qualified actuary like me, and you will realize that no one has a specific definition of what an actuary is, right? Because it's a whole lot of stuff, right? But in summary, it's a professional who deals with measuring risk and uncertainty, specifically financial risk and uncertainty, right? And even though that doesn't explain it well, I always go with a simple example of saying that, because insurance is well known by people, the person who calculates the premium that needs to be charged to you is an actuary, right? So they're there to deal with the financial risk of the fact that, firstly, what if you buy a vehicle and have an accident tomorrow? So the company needs to charge you appropriate premium to be able to pay for that, right? That's just it, but an actuary can work in reserving, they can work in investments, they can work, yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's difficult to, but I always think that's an easiest way to describe it. I'm on the reserving side, I've worked on the pricing also, right? So yeah, in my journey, so I work as a senior actuarial analyst at Deloitte. So I'm just going to go through my journey from high school. So I won't bore you with high school. She said she won't, but I will. Because for me, as I said, it builds up to all the miracles that I was talking about at the start, right? So I started at Skhulile Mdaka, so I'm from Mpumalanga. And I started in an African school. No, I can't speak Afrikaans. And I just need to make that clear, right? So, yeah, so funny enough, I actually wanted to be a doctor first, right? So it's actually quite funny, right? But everything you said after is exactly why I had a second thought, right? Specifically, I was scared of the idea of someone dying in my hands. It still scares me now, seeing a lot of blood and all that. I can't deal with that. I try to avoid situations like that. So when I had that, and you know, usually, and that's why I think this is a good initiative, and I want us to push it as a youth. Even as a youth individual, we come and talk about our career, because what happens is we all know a certain number of careers. So either you become a doctor, a police officer, a teacher, a nurse, and that's all you know, right? And because we're not exposed to everything else, we actually limit ourselves. You find that you actually have something that fits you 100%, that you won't be stressed, that you will enjoy, right? So on my side, yes, I want to be a doctor because that's all I knew, isn't it? Right? So I started at Skhulile Mdaka, and I've so not to like go through my whole journey in high school, I sort of pointed out certain things, right? So when I joined, I was doing well. Remember, and it pushed me a lot was this top 10 thing when you started, so I always aimed for that. Remember when I started, I was just actually on the lower part of the top 10, round number 8 and so on. And then I kept on pushing until I got to like number 1, right? And it's stuff like that, obviously, that pushed me. So the first thing I want to talk about is aiming for the moon, right? She said something very strongly about the fact that so varsity is hard, right? Even where I am now, it's hard. If you don't teach yourself at the lower level to work hard, it will be difficult, right? It reminds me of Proverbs 22 verse 6, right? If you don't train up a child, if you train up a child in a certain way, they will follow that. So one thing, especially to the young people, is while you're in high school, teach yourself to work hard at that point, because it's going to be difficult to adjust later on, right? So yes, so for me I said aim for the moon because I've always like tried to challenge myself, right? I'm not in competition with anyone, but I'm in competition with me, right? To say that I need to do better, right? So, and another thing through my journey, so for actuarial science, you always need to be very good at maths, right? So I always aim for the moon, and I think that is its own miracle that I'm going to talk about now, right? What also happened was the fact that when I was in high school, I'm a very shy boy. Let me say I used to be a shy person because I don't feel like I'm that shy anymore, and it's thanks to Teresa, I think, because I've always had to stand in front, and I'm not that shy anymore, right? So to the young people, aim for the moon and teach yourself that at an early age, right? I used to push myself to study extra in high school already, right? I remember I used to watch Mindset Learn videos, right? And I'm also offering myself to actually assist if someone needs assistance with certain concepts in mathematics, accounting, a bit of economics, yeah, right. And yeah, so another thing that when I was in varsity, right, in high school, people used to ask me to explain stuff to them. And it was always funny because when you explain things, people would think that, or my friends used to say that if I knew stuff as school, I would charge people like to explain. And they never understood that for me actually, I used to study by using people, right? And that's an advice to someone else. The best way to assess if you actually understand a concept is if you can explain it to someone else, right? So that's an advice that I'm giving to someone also. If you're still studying, if someone asks you something, push yourself to explain. Well, obviously if you know how to explain it, right? Another thing is, as I said, good behavior and hard work. Né? And this is where I'm now going to talk about the miracle that how I end up actually deciding to study actuarial science. So before grade 10, because before grade 10 you haven't selected subjects that will say that you want us, because you need to sort of select subjects that will allow you to study what you want. And that's also another very important thing that we need to talk about. Right? You can't study something else and then next thing you actually can't even match up. Right? So before grade 10, as I said, I want to be a doctor. And that was my idea. I would see people, doctors, like, you can see they drive well, everything is fine. I want to be a doctor also, all right? And then what happened is, and that's why I'm saying good behavior. I want to stress on that. So I'm very shy and I would believe I'm well behaved also. So what happened was my maths teacher, and I will forever be grateful for that man's life. Mr. Carl White, I think he liked the fact that I was sort of so focused in my studies and always focusing on the studies. And then he actually approached me one day. I was leaving class and I was doing very well in maths, and he was the teacher. And then he actually asked me, he's like, what do you actually want to do? I want to be a doctor. And then he looked at me, he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yes. He's like, do you know about actuarial science? I'm like, no, I don't know what's actuarial science. And he's like, okay. I'm saying it's a miracle because he later told me that actually he wanted to study actuarial science when he was young. And he couldn't because fees were quite high and he couldn't get a bursary, right? And now it's like he wanted to live his life through me, right? So you see how good behavior, well, people used to even call me teacher's pet, which is not even the case. But I was so close to the teacher to a point that we even, it wasn't on a personal level, even now, I can even talk to him, right? And through that, he gave me the idea to study actuarial science and connected me with the right people, right? So good behavior helps you. Another thing that I don't want to stress is spread your wings, right? Make sure that you speak to the right people. Because actually, if you're not connected to the right people, you will never know of, like, on my example also, I will never know about actuarial science. And from that day that he explained to me and connected me with the right people, I knew that this is the path I wanted to go, right? Even though it was still not clear, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do, right? And again, as I said, I'm willing to also help. If someone wants to know about actuarial science or even more, or wants to, or pursuing something that's similar to it, I wanna help, right? I believe it's the least that I can do to say thanks to Mr. White also, by me assisting someone else, you know? And another thing is important to ensure that even when you are far from home, you forever stay close to the Bible. As I said, God blessed me so well. Like in matric, I did very well. Like distinctions, I passed very well. Yeah. And to a point that I had two bursaries offers on my side to pursue my studies. But that's also another miracle in itself. In that, so I applied. I think it was Old Mutual. I applied on this other mining company, which doesn't make sense because I'm in financial, but I applied on mining, right? And also Stellenbosch, because I studied at Stellenbosch, was also offering bursaries. So I remember applying for Old Mutual and we drove, I think it was this side. I remember I'm from Mpumalanga. I remember driving this side with my parents and went to the interview. And they really grilled me in that interview. To a point that I remember when I come back, I wanted to cry. So I'm a very emotional person, I can easily cry, right? So I remember driving back and I was so torn. And I remember even talking to my dad, I'm like, I don't want to be like Mr. White who wasn't able to afford the fees. And I also don't want to press on them. I want to be able to study without them having to bear the financial burden of my studies. And as I said, I applied for the mining bursary, right? Then they came and did interviews. They did it at our school, at Sabran. And they liked me. They were very impressed. And then the lady was like, but the problem is, you're studying financial stuff and not mining, right? I was like, I'm just going to leave it to you. And believe it or not, they actually gave me that bursary while it didn't even match my studies at all. And that's miracle number 2 on my side. That when you pray to God, I remember coming back from home, from Gauteng, from that interview, crying, and my dad told me, no, don't worry. God knows. What you want to study will happen. You don't need to worry about anything. Remember praying about it even when I went to that interview. So something that I always teach my siblings also and at home. When I'm approaching something difficult, I want us to pray as a family. And I'm trying to encourage that as families. Even if it's a small child going for an exam, you're actually teaching from that level that we pray when we want to face things, right? Because God is there. So I prayed about that and I actually got the bursary. And the funny thing is, that bursary wanted to pay for my studies. But then I wanted one for accommodation. Then Stellenbosch was also offering studies. And again, a miracle happened. I called them, prayed about it. I called them, I'm like, okay, I already have for my studies. Can you convert it to accommodation? They're like, no worries. To a point that then I finished my studies without having to pay anything at all. Right. So now I want to talk about, so that was just high school and sort of putting out pointers about what you should focus on. And that failure is not the end of the road. Right? When I failed for that interview, I was torn. But then I knew that I had trusted God and things went okay. Right? So now I'm going to talk about varsity. And varsity is on its own a story that I forever, every time I tell people, I'm like, varsity is what brought me closer to God. Right? Because varsity is hard.
Yeah.
It's not child's play, right? And it's funny because it's also the place where people find freedom. Like, it's hard and it's where people find freedom. More than anything, I would actually even want it to be the other way around. When it's hard, you want your parents to be there. That if you know that you can't discipline yourself, then they put you on the right track. Right? So I'm going to talk about now in detail my studies. Right? So I studied, as I said, I applied at Stellenbosch, I got the bursary. And I remember thinking of going into a foreign world, right? Because I've always been in Mpumalanga, and now we're to travel and study in Cape Town. And I remember the first day, I actually cried. The first day when my parents left me, I did cry. And as I said, I'm very emotional. It's just the way I am, right? I remember the first day when they dropped me there, and they were like, this is your room. And I have a very strong relationship with my mom. Mom gave me a hug, and when she gave me a hug, I started crying. Realizing that I'm the only one here. And I've never had, yes, I was in Stellenbosch, which was what we call boarding school. But not Stellenbosch, say Brandfanicat. But it wasn't as the same because every weekend I knew that I'm going home. Right? But this one is now totally different. I knew that it would take months for me to go back home. And I remember the first day I got there, and you know how there's this initiation and so on. And sure, it made it worse. It made it worse. I didn't like it at all. And what even made it worse, I remember when during the initiation thing, where they make you like go around, run around and all that. It would break my spirit because I'm emotional, right? So then I remember we were actually playing soccer. And this is, I'm trying to also encourage you that if you want something, never change because someone else says something else, right? If you're determined on becoming an actuary, if you're determined on becoming a doctor, if you're determined on becoming an accountant, if someone else tries to break you down, just remember what made you choose that at the first and try to dispel anything. Right? And I'm saying this because I remember I was playing soccer there at our race. And then this guy is like, okay, what's your name? I'm in school. He's like, where are you from? He's like, you're from back home? I'm like, yes. And I'm happy that, okay, now I'm seeing someone who is from home. And he actually said something that also broke me. He's like, okay, what are you studying? Actuarial Science. And he just started laughing. I'm like, why are you laughing? He's like, you think you'll pass Actuarial Science? Forget it. You're not gonna make it. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, I also studied Actuarial Science. You see, now I'm studying something else. I'm waiting for you to move to this, right? And I won't lie, it told me, I remember I called my dad after, right? Because I'm very close to my family, I tell them everything. Right? Then I called them, and I told them, like, no, never worry about what they say, right? And from then on, I knew, I was like, okay, firstly, the fact that I did qualify for this course, it means that I'm capable to pass. There's a reason why there's requirements there, right? If I met those requirements, it means that I'll be able to pass. And I know that God won't make me live in Mpumalanga and drive all the way, fly all the way to Cape Town to leave me, right? And I trusted God. Focus on what, this is what I'm going to study. Right? Now I remember first semester, things started well, and then I realized, yeah, varsity is something else. You know, when you're leaving high school where you used to like getting 80s, 100s, you're like, this is nothing. I remember when the first class in maths, they're like, you'll need 40% to qualify. And then I started laughing. I'm like, what is 40%? What is 40%? Now I'll definitely get that. And then I realized that this was another level, right? I started struggling. Right. And another thing that I want to also say about people who are planning to go to study, it's very important to be open to your parents. If you're struggling, you're struggling. There's no reason to, like, if they call you, how are you doing? Because you know that you do it. I'm like, no, it's going well. Like, you know you're not doing well. Be very honest with them, right? Because for me, I think my honesty tells the parent to say, yeah, maybe you need to support him even more, right? He's struggling. So I used to tell my parents, I call them like, hey, I just wrote a test. That was something else. And my mom used to like, but no, I know you, you'll do well. She's like, you're my genius, you'll do well. I'm like, I'll try. It's hard, man. Then I remember the requirements in actuarial science. It's quite so. You study first semester. You study maths, some of your majors. You study economics. You study accounting. You study business management, and computer science. So I studied all those. And I remember then they have very strict requirements. You can't go to second semester if you haven't gotten a certain percentage. Right? They would obviously exclude you. Now, remember on my side, I needed to, I think in maths, they needed you to get at least 70%. And 70% in varsity is not 70% in high school, right? It was hard, right? And then they told me, okay, you need to do, and I remember writing that final test, right? And I actually told myself, I'm like, because I was doing well in computer science, I was like, you know what? If I don't do well here, I'm going to change to computer science, right? Now, I want to talk about how important it is to also have a support system, to talk to your parents and so on. Because my parents told me, when you left here, you weren't going to study computer science. You were there to study actuarial science. So you need to think clearly. Don't let like hardship to change you, right? This is what you wanted to study. Focus on it. Right? So I remember I prayed about it and actually did manage to get that 70%. So then I moved on. I was like, oh, you know, because I remember praying to God, I'm like, God, if you pass me, if you let me go through this hurdle, then I know that this is what you want me to study. I don't need to even think of anything. Then I went through the hurdle, went to second semester. And second semester was even harder, right? Second semester was the first time I ever failed anything in my life, right? And it was very hard. I remember leaving that exam room. I cried actually all my way to the race, right? To a point that even when people pass you don't want them like on your phone so that they don't see that the tears are there, because it's like they will think, you're on a phone. It's not, maybe talking to someone is hard. Right? And I remember telling my dad, I'm like, this thing is tough. Right? And then second semester, there's even another requirement to get to second year. Like, okay, you need to at least get 60% for actuarial science, because now the subjects were now even more linked to actuarial science. So we had subject that was saying actuarial science, which is part of the board exams that you need to write, right? And I remember I didn't get that 60%. So I failed a subject and I didn't get that 60%. So my life was now something else. When I remember flying back home, I was like, that fear of, you don't want to come back home and you have nothing to show, right? But again, very important to tell your parents. I was always honest with my parents, and they knew, right? And I told them. And dad was like, then they're like, okay. And then when I asked the university, like, okay, you can still continue actuarial science, but you will have to add a year. So instead of doing 3 years, you'll do 4 years. Then I was like, you know what, this is what I wanted to do. They're like, okay, first semester, second year, you will do financial risk management. You're no longer an actuarial science student. It was hard to actually accept that I'm no longer an actuarial science student. I'm a financial risk management student. And it was funny because you would sit with students who are still in the course, but you know that you're not part of the course. It's tough, right? And then they were like, okay, if you get at least 60% for this one, then we'll move you in second semester. I remember I studied hard, financial, and here's another miracle. When for that subject, so I like to play soccer. Well, at that time I don't play anymore, but I should play, right? So I remember when I was playing soccer, and then someone tackled me, and I fell, right? And I broke my arm. And this is with all this hardship in varsity. Now you have a broken arm and so on and all that. Actually, what happened was a portion of my bone, because I fell and I pressed on my arm, and then it broke a portion of my bone. To a point that then when I went to the doctor, they're like, okay, we'll have to use screws to put it back on your side, right? So I actually have screws. Sometimes I'm Iron Man because I have screws on my arm. I'm joking. Right? So then that operation happened. I remember when that before that, when I was playing soccer, next week I was supposed to write a test for that subject I need to do so well in, right? And now I can't study, right? And then I remember emailing the lecturer. I told her, he's like, no, it's fine. You'll write when you are fine. Right? And I was struggling in this subject, right? Remember in hospital, you want to nurse your pain, but you want to study also. So you have books on the side, but it's also painful, right? And I remember I then went to, when I left like I was sort of discharged, I told the lecturers, like, you can come and write tomorrow. It's fine, I'll give you extended time because you can't move easily, right? And I remember writing in the office, and God did a miracle. I actually passed that test with around 80%. I had never gone through, I had never passed that well in varsity before, because obviously everything else was now tough, right? And I knew that, okay, now God wants me to go through this. Right? Then that was test 1. Went to test 2. Then test 2 went back again. And now I'm at a level where I need 60%. After test 2, I get 58. My total mark is 6%, I'm at 58. And I remember going back home and I told them, you know what, it's fine, I'll just continue. Already I accepted that I'll end a year, it's fine, I'll just do it. And I remember I was with my friend who also was in the same boat. And I think he had got 59, right? And with this head of actuarial science, that man was a scary person. You would never want to get closer to him and talk to him because he was very strict, right? I wasn't going to say anything. I remember my friend, and I know I'm going to email him and say, it's just 1%, can you allow me? Right, he emailed him and then he allowed us. And I was like, good, great stuff. And I was like, it's fine, I'll just continue. And I'm talking about, I'm not going to describe the guy, but he was very strict, as I said. And I remember I accepted, I remember having to go study. When you now have to go to a class with first years, that feeling of they are there, first years are very happy and all that, and then you are repeating this thing, right? You are there with them. Hey, it was very difficult. Like, they're busy, they lost which class you're there, but you're the one who chose them. No, you go here, you go here. It's a tough thing of repeating. So I went there, I remember telling them, okay, this is it. And then I remember going back to class and going back to rest, and I knew this is tough for me to accept. But I was like, no, my spirit will end up accepting, it's fine, because it was the first day. And I remember getting home. And I can't remember how much I cried because of happiness, right? I got an email, and at first I was like, hey man, an email from the head of actuarial science, this man that I'm so scared of, right? And it's like, yeah, I went through your studies and your behavior and everything, and I know that you didn't get the 60 that is required. But after considering everything, I want to let you continue actuarial science. Amen. You don't have to add a year. You know what? If you knock too hard, you might just go back. Continue with your financial risk management. Knocking is slightly, coming. And when he was so friendly, and I couldn't believe that this is the same guy. Right? And it's like, I'm going to allow you, but don't disappoint me. Right? You need to now pass everything. I remember going back and I told my mom, I was like, we need to pray about this. I'm passing everything from now on. There's no going backwards. And that's what happened. Passed everything, went to third year, and third year there was only one subject which was very tough for me, again, the whole year. And I remember that one, I actually just qualified for the exam. Everything else I was passing except that one. And I remember I failed it with the first attempt, right? But then the second attempt, I actually passed it, right? And I qualified, and I finished my degree, and I actually graduated. And for me, as I said, it's a lot of miracles. From not knowing that you want to be an actuary, right? Getting a bursary when you technically shouldn't have deserved it because you don't study engineering, right? Going through all of this, you didn't qualify, but now you're allowed to continue, right? So that, as I said, that's my journey. And in terms of what work, like you can't and it's very difficult to adjust, as I said, from high school studying to varsity studying, because it's difficult, right? And I say you need a support system. And as I said, I'll avail myself again. If anyone wants, and even if accounting, obviously I'm not the best, maybe you can ask Mrs. Mohoko with higher level accounting. But the basics, I actually like teaching. To a point that if there's something that you don't understand, my siblings even know. Yesterday they had something in economics that they didn't understand. I was like, okay, cool. They give me the stuff, right? And I acted as if I know. Well, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I was like, okay, just give me an hour. Came back and explained everything because I actually enjoy explaining. So in a way, I'm saying, do not hesitate. Yes, I might look scary, but text me, right? Text me and say, school, I need this. I don't understand this. And I'm 100% willing to help, right? And if you want to study actuarial science, yeah, let's talk together, right? I'm not yet qualified, but I'm only left with 3 board exams and I'll be a qualified actuary. So maybe next time when I come back, I'll be saying I'm a qualified actuary.